Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today, we will be discussing the scheduler. We're going to go over tips and tricks for you. And before we get started, just some housekeeping items. We want to make sure that everyone on the call takes the opportunity to download the handout. The handout, please download that so you can use it as a resource. Also, during our training today, if you have any questions, please be sure to enter those questions to the question inbox. Also, the training for today is being recorded and will be available in our community's website and under our Nova Time system under Chapter 8. There is a link on there that will take you to our go-to channel. So if you need to review the information that's being discussed today, you can access that there. And also, when the meeting ends today, you will also get a link to that recording. Today we have two presenters. Our main presenter is Crystal. She is our professional service consultant. And then our co-host is Jamie Stoltz. He is our senior implementation consultant. The agenda for today we're going to show you how to set up your preferences, how to set up your different work group filters, and then we're going to show you how to use the scheduling templates, how to create new templates, how to modify a single day, how to schedule multiple employees at one time. So our system allows you to schedule up to 9 cycles. So we're going to show you how to do that. We're also going to show you how to copy an employee's schedule. And then we're going to show you how to audit scheduled changes. So this is our agenda for today. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, Crystal.
All right, thank you, Lucy. Okay, so to start here, I'm going to walk us through how we can set our default preferences from the template schedules page. The page that we're looking at right now is going to be the default in the system. So with no other preferences set, this is what this page will look like. There are 3 main components to this page that allow us to customize it for our individual views. The first one is going to be the preference menu, which is this gear here towards the top left-hand side of the page, just to the right of where that date range shows. This box allows us to change a couple of our default views in the system, specifically for this template schedules page. The first one is going to be how you want the page to be viewed immediately upon entry. Right now it's showing me by scheduled group. So in the background in the kind of grayed out area, you'll see that it shows us by my department, the start and end times, and then behind that it'll show me the individual employees or the number of people scheduled and the number of hours scheduled for that department. The alternative to that is to viewing the employees individually one by one and being able to view their schedule per day. The other items in here then come with the employee view. So most of these checkboxes here can also be enabled when you're on the page itself, as you need to see them temporarily. But if you want them to be the default options when you're on the page, then you would come in here through the preferences. So we can display templates that are created through the access group or from the individual user. We can display totals on the bottom of the schedules. We can display pending time off requests within the actual scheduling piece itself, rather than just opening up the box down below. We can enable a short start and end time format on there if you don't want to see too much extended data. You can easily see, or you can exclude employees who are not scheduled, so you can focus only on those that do have schedules. And then you can also include your group level for scheduling. So my system right now, I'm scheduling based off of the employee's department or the department I need to schedule them in. Your database may look at job or position or location or have multiple options in there. But when I talk about department, that's just going to correspond with whatever group level your organization uses for scheduling. We can also then include additional information. So not only will it show the start and stop times the employees are going to work, but we can include meal information, whether this meal is coming from the employee shift or if it's a meal that you've added into the templates as part of your schedule. We can have the system show the pay code in addition to all of that extra data. And then we can also have it show how the schedule was generated, whether it was coming from the shift, whether it was a user-defined or user-created schedule, whether it was something that came from a giveaway or exchange as part of the concierge scheduling or the advanced scheduler. So you may not know what all these checkboxes do right off the bat, and that's okay. So you'll always have the option to pop back in here at any point in time and update your preferences. Then the next time you log out and log back in, come to this page, the template schedules page, you'll be able to see your default as set. The other part of this page then is going to be when I transition it here, either between the scheduled groups in the top right-hand corner or to the employee. So again, when we're looking at the scheduled group, which is the normal default in the system, it's going to show us all the groups, or in this case, departments, the employees are scheduled, and then the work hours. When you come to this page, if you have nobody scheduled, it may be blank. You may just see nothing in this top area, and then all these areas down below to expand. When I transition this to the employee part, that's where we get to see most of those details that we set in that preference area. So then it activates this box or these options below that toggle between the scheduled groups and the employee that then allow us to see if we want to see the pending requests. So if I toggle this off, notice how Ashley Beadle right here, she has a pending request on Friday the 11th. When I toggle that off, it'll disappear. Toggle it back on, that's showing me the pending request. When it comes to the display of totals, when I toggle it off, it disappears underneath each employee, and then toggle it back on, we'll pop it back in. And the displaying of templates is going to be this top area up here, which we're going to head to shortly. But if I want the system to display my scheduled templates upon entry, I'll toggle that on. Otherwise, if I turn it off, it disappears. The main difference between toggling it on here on the main page and using it in your preference section is going to be that toggling it off down here is going to be a temporary addition, which means if I don't have it set in my preference to automatically show these items, when I log in next, just by toggling it on here, does not guarantee that they'll automatically be on the next time I log in. So I do suggest that after you do come to this page and you get familiar with some of the options that you'd like to see, it's always good to come back into this gear to your preference and make sure that it's set up by default. So the next time you come to the template schedules page, it looks exactly like it did the last time you left it. All right, so the next part we're going to go to then is going to be how else you can filter or sort this page to make it the most useful. So at this point, I'm going to focus on the different filter section. In this case here, towards the top left again, there is this little person image. This gives us the option to filter the page to a single employee. If I just needed to find one person out of a list of many. Or if I wanted to filter it based off of different group information. So there is this filter button here. So this box has a few different options, just like the preference did, depending on what you're looking at. The first one is going to be here, the filter type. So do we want the system to look at the employee's default group information, which is what the employee groups does. So it's looking at the employee info information when it looks at all of the different group levels the employee could be assigned to. So of course we can filter by employee, but then my pay group, my location, my department, state, company, and position, those are all the different labor levels or group levels I have set up in NovaTime to assign my employees into. So as I pop into my department option, I can specifically say only show me employees whose default department is finance. I'm just going to click OK, just to have it shorten up here so you can see what that looks like. And then also notice that when I do filter it, it changes the word filter to show in red. And then it also activates these filters in the other sections of the page as well. So that way, if I do extend them, I would see only the employees in the finance department. I am going to jump back into my filter though. I'm just going to uncheck that one. I can activate multiple options in here too, so I could filter by location and then department if need be, so you can have multiples in here. The other option for that filter type is going to be based off of the scheduled group. So this is going to come more in handy if you already have some kind of schedules or shifts built in here. You can still also filter it by individual employees. I could select a list of people I want to see specifically. Or I can come in here and filter based off of where the employee is scheduled by department, or again, that scheduling type, which is going to determine, did this schedule come from a defined shift? Is this user defined? Did somebody create this schedule for the employee manually? Was this a request the employee made through the system, like a time off request? Or was this an open or giveaway schedule that the employee used through either the concierge scheduling or the advanced scheduler? I don't actually want to filter my page at all, so I'm just gonna, nothing's filtered, nothing's red, so I can click OK here to go back to all of my employees. Again, anytime that you're not seeing all of the employees on your list here, just make sure you don't have any filter set. Again, that does show in red when there is a filter. Now, one other piece to the page here when it comes to filtering or sorting your employees is going to be how many employees you can see at one time. So I'm going to draw our attention to the very bottom of my screen. Minimize some of these. And then at the very bottom on the right-hand side, there's this area called items per page. So I only have access to 7 employees, which makes it really easy for me to schedule. But if I was a manager who had 25, 30, 40 employees that I was scheduling manually one by one, it might be more useful to see all of them on the same page without having to go page to page. So this items per page option does allow you to select more than just a small list of employees. I could pop in here and say, I want to see 20 employees at one time. Had I had access to 20 employees, it would show then all 20 employees on one page, and I could scroll up and down as necessary. The next part of here is going to be really the heart and soul of the template schedules page, which is creating templates and assigning them to individual employees to make their schedule. You can make schedules as far out in advance as you want, and you can also have this page show more than just a week. So there is that toggle next to that preference towards that top left-hand side of the page that lets us view it either by week or by month. And I'll just transition it to month so you can see what it looks like. And I'm just going to transition it back to week. There we go. So a couple of differences you'll notice on my employee schedules I do want to point out before we even get into creating templates. And that's going to be with Ashley Beadle here. So Ashley Beadle actually is assigned to a shift in the system. So every time payroll is processed or every time somebody generates these schedules, it's going to pull from Ashley's shift. So her shift says that she works Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And also because I added in the meal parameter, it's showing me that she should be taking a 60-minute meal. And it did also tell the system to tell me the department, so it's showing me that she's working in the accounting department. I can still always modify Ashley's schedule even though it's coming from her shift itself. So I do still have the option to delete schedules completely. I have the options to come into individual days and make modifications, even though it was coming from her shift and not directly from a manually created schedule. The second thing that's going on with Ashley is she does have a pending time off request for Friday the 11th. There's a little gray line here that separates the difference out. The main thing I wanted to point out here is this is showing me the pending request. And I know that it's pending because it's still showing me her schedule for that day. If we look at Harold towards the bottom, he has an approved vacation request on Thursday. And I know that it's approved because it's actually part of his schedule. So it actually replaced the schedule that he had working from 5 to 1. So the main thing I just wanted to keep in mind is that if an employee is assigned to a shift, it is going to create this schedule. If they're not, like the rest of my employees, you're going to see nothing. Like Cherry and Scarlett, Johnny, Terry, and Marcus, they don't have a schedule or a shift at all. They are completely blank. They do not know what to work yet. So the next component here is going to be creating our templates, and that's this top part. So a template I like to think of more as a stamp. I create all of these options and I can stamp them onto individual employees on individual days. I do have some defaulted ones in here, my vacation and my sick, and these are coming from the Access setup. So we do have the option of having administrators create templates on behalf of individual supervisors or administrators. It publishes out to their page so they can use them as options, but they can't modify or delete them. That doesn't prevent supervisors or admins from creating their own templates though as well. I'm going to create some new ones here by clicking on the little square with the pencil to edit my templates. From here, I would edit any templates I have created. So that 5 to 1 is something I've created, so I could come in here and edit it. But in this case, I'm actually going to add some new ones. So I'll move over to the next spot here that says Add Insert Template. You are not limited to the number of templates that you can create either. So if you have 20 or 30 different templates you may be using over the course of the year, you are more than welcome to create them all at one time or pop in here as you need to and create them as they're needed. So the first button here is going to be the description area. So this is an optional field if you wanted to force a description out that will show onto the template area. If we look back into my default item here from 5 to 1, I did not create a description. The system itself is going to show me what department it's going to assign the employee to and then also the hours worked. So in this case, I'm going to create a description just so that we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to call this HR from 9 to 5. In the pay code, you do have your list of different pay code options. So in this case, if I'm creating that work hour schedule, I am going to select whatever pay code my employees punch into. So my employees use the 0 work hours. I'm going to use that as my template pay code. From here, we can either determine the department the employee is working into or have the system select it based off of their home department. I did make my description here HR. So that means I'm going to actually tell the system when I use this template, the employees are going to be assigned to the HR department. That means when my employee punches in on any day that has this template assigned to it, it will assign them to the HR department on their timesheet as well. From here, I'll put in my time. I could indicate a meal as well. You know, it's still going to look at their shift to know if it should be an automatic deduction, or it could just be in here to indicate to the employee they should be taking a meal. I'm going to say my employee should take a 30-minute meal, and they should take it between 11 and 11:30. This meal area is completely optional. You could leave it completely blank, or you could put the information in here as well. I'm going to click OK, and then here is my schedule now, my HR 9 to 5. Now just notice the difference between the headers here. The default job from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then my description of HR 9 to 5. I personally don't like the way that looks because it's not uniform for me, so I am just going to jump back in there, delete my description, click OK, so that it updates it and makes it a little bit more uniform. All right, let's go through and create maybe 2 more of these, and then we'll start assigning them to the employees. So I'm going to add insert, going to select my pay code again. This time I'm not going to assign a department. I want the system to pick the employee's default department when I use this schedule, so I'm going to toggle that default on. I'm going to do 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm not going to put any kind of meal indicator in there. Again, the system will still follow the employee's shift assignment when it comes to automatic meal deductions. And I'm going to click OK. And one more, just for fun. Add insert, select your pay code, choose if you wanted to tell the system what department the employee is working in or if it should pick up their default. And then let's do like a 3 p.m. to an 11 p.m. Now, just like with the timesheet, you do need to indicate if the time is going to be AM or PM. So if I would have just put AM, it was going to assume 11 a.m. the next day. So just keep an eye on that because that can make some employees scheduled for like 18 hours in a row when you didn't mean to. And then click OK. Now I'm done making templates at this point in time, so I am going to save the area by clicking on the green floppy disk here with the check mark. I can always come back into this area and add more or delete existing ones or update existing ones as well. So you have full control over the area if you've created those templates yourself. Now, when it comes to actually using these templates on employees, then I'm just going to click on the template I'd like to use and then start assigning it to an employee on the page. So I selected the default job from 10 to 6. I'm going to assign it to Cherry, Monday through Thursday, and we'll have Scarlett work that on Friday. Now you can see the differences in the ones that I'm currently modifying versus the ones that are actually saved in the system. So these are a little bit more italicized. They're showing in red versus the blue. And when I hover over the times here, it doesn't actually let me click into them. It just shows the little arrows. When I do save the page, that's when it's going to solidify that schedule in here and then allow me to make any modifications as required. I'm going to select another job, so let's do the 3 to 11, and we're going to have Johnny work that Monday through Friday. And then for my HR position, I'm going to select that one next and then just assign it for Scarlett for the rest of the week. So this is, I consider this the fun part, but of course I'm not actually creating schedules. But this is where you can just click in here and assign the employees into the correct times, the correct departments on the correct days for that week. And then once you save that page, that's when if the employees were looking at their dashboard or looking at their schedules page within the system, they'd be able to see that these schedules are now exist. So that also keeps in mind that as you're creating these schedules, depending on the timing with your employees, it will determine on when they see them. Once you save the page and the system looks like this with the blue time frames and the departments and all of that, the employees could ultimately see these either through that mobile app, if they looked at their schedule from a time clock, or if they're looking at a schedule piece from the web services itself. All right, so far we have created a couple of templates. We've assigned them to our employees. Now, one thing I do want to do next is show you the scheduled groups. So we're looking at by individual employee, but I also want to transition it and see it by the scheduled groups. So now the page looks a little bit different than it did before. It's showing us all of the different departments I have scheduled, all the different time frames I have scheduled. And then for those departments that have multiple people working on the individual days, I can open them up here off to the left, and then I can view the individual employees working. Kind of the same functionality from the employee side. You can still make modifications from this page, but at least you can make sure that if you do need a certain number of employees working on a certain day in a certain department, this page will then allow you to see that a lot easier. Now I am going to jump back to the employee side, so I'll just use that toggle again. Seamless transition from one page to the next so you can view the data as required. Now, if there are one-off circumstances where you may not want to create a template, but you still do need to modify the schedule, you can still do that from within the individual days. So in this case here for Johnny, he normally works from 3 to 11, but on Friday, I actually just need him to come in and work from 3 to 10. 3 to 10 is not a normal schedule, so I'm not going to create a template for it at this point in time, but I do need his schedule to be updated and show that. So I'm going to click into the box. It's going to show me what he's scheduled for on that day, and then from here I can make my modifications. Once I do update Johnny's schedule, I will be responsible for contacting him and letting him know that his schedule changed or reposting the schedule somewhere for him to see that. So the next part in here, so what we've done so far, just to recap, is we've gone through our preferences, we've set up the page so it defaults to how we need it to be set up. We've created a couple of templates here to assign to our employees to create our week. We've modified Johnny's schedule here so that he's only working from 3 to 10 now on Friday. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually just copy some of these schedules. So I created the perfect schedule for this week, and I want to copy this moving forward. There are two different ways to copy schedules in the system. The first way is I like to use the scheduled group page. And let's look at the HR function here. So let's say I have Scarlett, Terry, and Marcus all working in HR from 9 to 5 on Thursday the 10th. But I also need them to work on Friday, the same hours, these 3 employees. I could certainly go back to the employee page and schedule them all individually. I can then also come from the scheduled group page and select the employees and copy them to the next day. So you'll see now that I've expanded the information that I have these 3 little, enhance my page here, these 3 little dots, which then either allow me to add a schedule completely, copy the current employee list, or delete the schedules. So I'm going to use the copy button here. It's going to let me select the individual employee schedules for that day. And then any day I need to copy these 3 employees working this schedule for this department, I just click on the little paste option. Maybe I also need 2 employees on Saturday, but I don't need Terry. I can uncheck Terry and then copy that to Saturday. So it only copies forward for Scarlett and Marcus. I'm going to save this. Oops, Scarlett has some overlapping schedules. Let's see, where is she also scheduled? Okay, so I can't schedule Scarlett here on Friday because she's already scheduled in the risk management. So I'm just going to exit out for that one. And we'll try and save again. There we go. So you will notice the system will give you errors. It will not allow you to schedule the same person in 2 places at the same time. you will be able to then come in here and modify that to make sure that the employees are not overlapping. So again, just to show you, if you do need to copy a schedule moving forward or moving to another day in the system, from the scheduled groups page, you would just extend it. So I'm going to extend my HR group. I'm going to click on the three bubbles here, or the three dots in the top left-hand corner of that day. I'm going to select copy. I will then be able to select or unselect employees I do not need to schedule to the next day that I'm pasting to. And then once I've selected the appropriate employees, I can then use the paste option in any day that I need to schedule those employees. And then once I click save, the system's going to validate that there's no overlapping schedules. And if not, it will just process through and then show me those two employees are scheduled on those days. Now there is one other part in here, the copy schedules button completely at the top. So this one works a little bit differently, but also kind of the same. Let's open that up. I will just give you kind of a warning on this copy schedules button here that once you do activate this and you click OK to process through, the only way to undo this is to manually go and fix the schedules and deleting them one by one for however many cycles you populated into the system. But what this button does then, and let me just cancel out and go back into it. So it's the copy button that you'll see kind of towards the top left-hand side of the page. What this allows us to do is select the employees and copy their schedules moving forward. So we created the perfect week. 9/6 to 9/12 is the perfect week for my employees, and I want to keep it this way if I can for the next 4 weeks. What I can do then is define the cycle. So my cycle in this case is just this 1 week. It's 9/6 to 9/12. And I'm going to tell the system that I want to copy this week's schedule starting next week on the 13th. So the start date here is usually going to be the day after the end date up here. And then I get to define the number of cycles. So because I am only copying or defining the cycle here as 1 week, I can copy this up to 9 weeks. If you define a cycle here in this first step that is 4 weeks long, then ultimately you are scheduling people for the next 9 4-week cycles. I'll just do 1 for now. Then I can come in here and select the employees I'd like to copy. So I can either do all of them or none. Let's just do a couple. And then as you can see, there are all these other options down here to sort and filter the employees as well. So you're only selecting the employees you'd like to. So what I'm doing on this page again is I am now telling the system that I'm copying the schedule from 9/6 to 9/12 to next week, starting on 9/13 for Terry, Marcus, and Harold. And it's only going for 1 cycle. When I click OK, there we go. I'm doing it for multiple employees, not just 1. When I click OK, it's going to copy Terry's schedule, Marcus' schedule, and Harold's schedules for this week into next week. And again, this process cannot be undone, basically meaning there's no undo button. If you do make a mistake at this point in time, you would have to go and update their schedules one by one. And click OK. All right, it's copying the schedules. I'm going to cancel out of this box. And now if I go forward 1 week, let's go look at the individual employees instead of by group, make it easier. Now Ashley's already scheduled because she's on that shift, so that's automatically going to fill in even though we didn't select her. But now if I look at the bottom, we have Terry, Marcus, and schedule. It's going to, Harold, their schedules are going to match exactly to what they were scheduled last week. There is, in the access part of the system, you are allowed to select which pay codes will be copied forward and which pay codes will not be overridden. So just keep that in mind. If you would only be copying forward the work hours pay code and you don't want any kind of vacation or sick or PTO to copy forward or be overridden if it's already been approved, there are parameters you can set individually to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, so the other button up here, so we copied the schedules as a whole. We selected a larger group of employees. We copied 1 week to the next. We can also copy individually then using those bubbles. There we go. You can either do it from the employee page or that schedules group page. The other buttons we have at the top of the page, since we haven't gone through those yet, is the add schedule, the update schedule, and the audit. So let's go through those individually. The add schedule button allows you to create a schedule for multiple employees at one time. So this would allow me to say on Saturday the 19th, I can either pick from a template I've already created, or I can freeform it all together and just manually enter it in there. So on Saturday the 19th for work hours, and in this case, I'm just going to leave the department blank because I do want it to pull from the employee's default. I need people to work from 8 to 12. And then when I go to the next page, I'll be able to select which employees I want to work the schedule. So in this case, I need Ashley, I need Scarlett, and I need Terry to work on Saturday. They're all going to be scheduled on Saturday from 8 to 12 in whatever department their home department happens to be. Click OK. And then as the page updates, now you can see on Saturday the 19th, I have all 3 of those employees working from 8 to 12. The add schedule button here is useful for allowing you to schedule multiple people from on the same day at the same time. You can also use this add schedule kind of functionality individually by going into the individual employee and kind of creating that free-form schedule, not coming from a template, but just letting you enter in the individual data as it might differ from day to day. The other button in here is going to be the update schedules. So the update schedules button is useful if you need the system to kind of refresh itself when it comes to employees' shifts and what's entered onto the schedule itself. So you'll actually see this little icon here in 2 different places. So if I go ahead, let me go ahead a couple of weeks. There we go. So if I wanted to update an individual employee schedule, Ashley, for instance, she's our one assigned to that shift Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If I wanted the system to push that out immediately into this schedule, I can use the Update Schedules button next to her name. What that's going to do then is going to auto-schedule her based off of her shift. Okay. Now again, normally this happens during the payroll process. It's one of the checkboxes that happens. It will, when payroll is processed, it will update the next 2 pay periods worth of schedules to match the employee shift. If you needed to do this for a larger group of employees rather than just one by one here, that's when you would use the update schedules at the top of the page. Same functionality. It's going to look at the employees you filtered on the page here, based off of either your group filters or your individual search and filter. And then OK. It's going to take a couple of minutes, depending on your employee size. Now, ultimately, because the rest of my employees do not have shifts in the system, they have no defined work days or in and out times because I have to do that manually, the page actually isn't going to do anything to update them. The other part to this update schedules is if you ever need the schedule for someone to go back to their normal shift. So if I come in here and update Ashley and say on Monday the 28th, I need her to work until 7 p.m. And now for whatever reason, I need to reset her back to her normal shift time. That's when I can use this update button as well. That way, if you do end up making modifications to an individual schedule and you need it to go back to their defined shift, you can still use that update schedules button. And then the last main piece on here is auditing the schedule. So as changes are being made, every time I add a schedule, every time I remove a schedule, every time I copy, every time I modify. Anytime I do anything to this page, the system is keeping record of that. There are 3 different ways you can audit the schedules. You can audit individual employee schedules for a time frame by using this little audit button here next to their name. Okay, so here I can see all the changes that I've made. I've updated it, start, end, before and after. I've added, I've deleted. I've done quite a few things with Ashley's schedule here. If I wanted to see anybody's schedule, let's go back a couple of weeks. Anybody's audit to this time period, then I can use the audit button at the top of the page. That one did not work as I expected it to. But the other way that you can do it if you wanted to see it in mass. So if I wanted to see every change that happened on this schedule for all of the employees for whatever time frame, there is a report that you can run for this. So I am just going to pop over to the report generator. And then there is a schedule audit trail report. This one is located down in the system audit trail section. There's 2 of them here, depending on what you're looking for. And in this case, then, when you run this report, for whatever date range you run it for, it will show you every change an individual person has made to any person's schedule. So I have 3 pages of changes for all of my employees. And then just a reminder, as the employees are being scheduled in the system, that's also what triggers those exceptions on the timesheet, the tardy exceptions, the early outs, the absences. So this is where I can see when the supervisor added the schedule to the system. Was it before or after the employee punched in or punched out? And then I can see all the modifications. And in case you missed it, it's the first part of the top of the page, but it tells you who made this change. So I am the only user currently making adjustments to this schedule. So just wanted to recap this page a little bit and go through the buttons one more time just to remind us what happens. So you do have a preference menu here towards the top left-hand side, the gear to the right of where the date range is. That will let you set your default preferences, so what happens and how the page shows when you first come into it every time. You can also set your individual preferences when you're actually on the page itself by using the different toggle buttons here, or switching between the scheduled group, which again shows employees as they're scheduled by their department or job or position and the time, or by viewing the employees individually. You can then also create schedule templates in here to assign to individual employees as need be. And again, we did that by clicking on the square here with the pencil to edit. We can edit existing templates in here by finding them and clicking on the same square with the pencil to edit that individual template, or by creating a brand new one by finding and using the Add Insert Template button. Optionally creating a description for it that will show back on the main page, selecting the appropriate pay code, deciding on if we will be determining the department the employee works in or if the system's going to pick from their default, putting the start and end time for this template, possibly indicating how long the meal should be and the time it should be taken. Ultimately, the employees, if they do have an automatic meal, will still follow the shift rules as long as this number is not more than that. And then clicking OK to have it published out into the main page. You are not limited to the number of schedule templates you can have on the page at one time. You can always delete ones you no longer need by using the red X next to them. Once you are done modifying or creating schedule templates, you are free to use them on any employee for any date range by clicking on the item so it highlights in yellow, and then selecting on the individual days an employee should be scheduled for that time frame. When you need to use another one, you can simply click on the next one so that it highlights itself in yellow again, and you can schedule that for the employee. You can schedule an employee to more than one template on a day as long as the time frames do not overlap. So when you do go to save the page, if you do have employees with overlapping schedules, the system will tell you at this time. You can add schedules to an employee by clicking on the three dots in the top left-hand corner of any box to add a schedule for that one employee for that one day. Again, either doing it free-form style, where you're selecting the pay code, the department, the start and stop times, or you can pick from a template. You can also schedule multiple people on the same day at the same time by using the Add Schedule button towards the top left-hand side. Again, either creating it from freeform or selecting a template. And then selecting the employees that should be working it. You can copy schedules moving forward either from the employee page here or more commonly from the scheduled group itself, which will allow you to dig into individual group scheduling group levels and timeframes. It will allow you to use those three dots again to copy the employees in that schedule, deselect people you don't need, and copy them forward. Again, the system will give you an error if you are overlapping schedules, so you don't schedule someone in more than one place at one time at the same time. The other way to copy a schedule, if you did want to do a rotation, is the Copy Schedules button at the top of the page. This will allow you to copy one employee's schedule to multiple employees or to copy multiple employee schedules moving forward. In this box here, you would select a date range you're copying, whether it's 1 week, 4 weeks, 5 weeks at a time, the start of the next schedule, which is usually the day after the end date here above, the number of cycles, we can go up to 9 cycles, and then selecting the appropriate employees for the different filter options below. And then again, a warning for this page is that once you do process or click OK here, it's going to follow all of your instructions and copy it moving forward that number of cycles. And the only way to undo this process is to go and manually update the schedules one by one. Through the access category, you can define which types of schedules move forward, whether it's just ones that are coded as the regular work hours. And you can also stop the system from overriding any kind of approved time off. Last but not least, there is an audit function in here as well, so you can audit when changes are made to the schedule. So in this case, I will transfer back to my employee view. And then if I wanted to see any additions or changes to an individual employee schedule, I can use the audit button here just to the right of their name on the left-hand side. And I think the last thing we haven't gone through is how do you delete a schedule from somebody? So in that case, you may have seen it as I've hovered over them a couple of times, is if you do need to delete a schedule, you can just hover over the day for that employee, use the red X. Once you save the page, then it will delete that schedule from that day. Okay, I'm just going to let the page sit here for a second, kind of take a peek around of it and see if there's any buttons in here that you might have questions on. As you're looking at employee schedules, if there's any questions on that part, the preferences, the scheduled group toggle versus the employee group toggle. We went through a lot of detailed information today with a lot of buttons, a lot of choices for customization. The page is great, but it does give you a lot of options to do whatever you might possibly need to. All you need to know is where to go and how to do it. So one thing I want to point out also while you're kind of thinking about this page, kind of thinking about how you might use it, what difficulties you might come into play, what questions you might have. I do want to point out the help section within NovaTime as well. If you haven't used it before or even noticed it before, there is a help section in the very top right-hand corner of the screen. It is the question mark, which shows in green once you hover over it. So the help section here, when you pop it open, will open in a separate screen, but it does give you a lot of options for searching or viewing for information. So on the left list here, It does open up to giving you different chapters. There's a whole section here on the video learning library that will walk you through different videos on different parts of the system, dependent upon your responsibility. There's also a Nova Tip and Support Corner that will also give you some videos and some documentation that you can view. There's ongoing education as well, if you wanted to see about any upcoming training webinars. And then also there is a search function in here as well. So if you did need to find something specifically that you're looking for, you can search for it. And then the left-hand side is going to give you all of the different pages that talk about that item. So at this point, I'm just going to see, are there any questions that we need to address? One of the questions in there is, can you filter by manager? And not directly unless you have your managers listed in a specific group level, then you could filter it here in the box. But if you do not have a specific like supervisor or manager group level where you identify that for each individual employee, then unfortunately you cannot. If you are an administrator who has access to all employees in the system, you'd be able to see the schedules for all employees. The next question I see is about the audit button by the employee's name. I would think if you don't see the audit button, but you do see everything else, maybe I can have Jamie jump in here to see if he has any other experience with that. But Jamie, do you know if that audit button is something we can control through the access, or any ideas why it wouldn't show for somebody?
We can set it up under company setup, system setup, and then
Miscellaneous schedule.
And then at the bottom right there, enable schedule audit trail.
So one thing I do know about this button is that it's only going to show you information that happened after it's been toggled on. So if you do go and activate it right now and you've been using schedules for a while, you're not going to be able to see an audit of anything that happened before this button was toggled on. And again, it's company setup, system setup, miscellaneous, and then in the schedule section there. And if you don't have access to this page, you might need to check with your Nova Time administrator or contact our support as well. Let me go back to my page. So the next one in here is if the employee schedules rarely change, is there a way to set up a schedule for an entire year? Yes, you can schedule the employees out as far in and as advance. If it's something where they're on some sort of like 14 or 21 day rotation, you could actually build that through the shift itself and have it populate out to the schedule. If it really is just like super random days and times and departments and they just know what it is for a full year, but there's really no consistency to build it into a shift, you could certainly build out the schedule from January 1st to December 31st. That is where you might want to play a little bit with the copy function as well to see if they do have some non-consistent rotation that you can program in. You could play with the copy schedules and copy the schedules maybe from 1 month to the next. How to unassign a template from an employee, that would be where you could just hover over the box. In this case for Cherry here, maybe she doesn't need to work on the 14th. Then I could just X out in that box. And then once I save the page, she would no longer be required to work on that day. So that way, it would take away any absences that might show up. It would take away any timesheet exceptions she may have earned if she already had punches for that day. How do we access this page altogether? I kind of jumped to this page just from the get-go. So if you do have access to this page, you're going to find it here in the menu in the top left-hand corner. You'll find it under the scheduler category, and then you'll find it under the template schedules page. So if you don't currently have the scheduler category, or you currently don't have the template schedules page at all, that is where you might need to reach out to your Nova Time administrator to activate that for your access. Or if you are the Nova Time administrator and still don't see that, you can reach out to our support team as well, and they can walk you through how to enable that for the appropriate people. How do I make, going back to one of the other questions, if we can filter it by managers, how do we make that into a work group here? So what I have seen some organizations do in the past is if I go to like my employee info page where all my employee data is set up, you could actually add that in as a group level if you had any more available. Our system by default will go up to 8 if necessary. And then basically what you would do is I would create a group 7 here. I would add all of my supervisors or managers as an option within that group. And then I could assign my employee to those individual supervisors. So that way, when I run reports, when I look at different pages here, I'd be able to filter my employees by that group level. So think of it more as a group level than anything else. It'd be a manager group level. All right, I think we came down to the last of our questions. I'm going to pop open this page. So in the slide, in the handout, that PowerPoint is going to walk through all of the different pages that we talked about, the different buttons, all the different options possible on this page, how to create templates, how to use templates, how to modify the individual days, how to add schedules, how to copy schedules, how to use the audit button. And then the final thoughts in here is, again, just going through that communities or going through the online help. So again, it's that question mark in the top right-hand corner when you're logged in, either as an employee, a supervisor, or an admin. It's going to launch open that secondary page that allows you to go into all of the different categories and chapters, videos, documentation that you can download. You can also join our communities page that will have all of the webinars in there and some documentation. And then last but not least, we just want to thank you for joining the webinar today and hope you found it useful.